There I was. I was sitting in a gray cubicle in rural Maryland. It was my first job after college, and I had just finished another cold call. My palms were sweaty. I had yet to land a sale. To make matters worse, I was the only Black woman in the office. I was so shy, but I desperately wanted to fit in. So I did what so many of us do in spaces that were never quite built for us: adjust. Softening my voice a little, laughing at just the right moments, learning which parts of myself to leave in the car before I walked through those doors. And I got really good at it. I was agreeable and I was likable. So one afternoon, my coworkers started playing a game. So they were big fans of the show The Office. So one guy thought it would be really funny to go around the room and figure out which character everyone in the office matched. They went around the room. One guy was Jim. He was charming, a little sarcastic. Another guy was Dwight. He was intense and very rule obsessed. And another woman was Pam. She was our creative and sweet receptionist. Everyone in the office got a character that matched their personality. Then they got to me. They said, Kelly Kapoor. Now, for those who don't know, Kelly Kapoor was the only woman of color on the show. She was in the main cast for the first couple of seasons. Her character was loud, boy crazy, and a little ditzy. She was written more like a punchline than an actual character. But the thing is, that wasn't who I was. I wasn't loud, and I wasn't silly, at least not at work. Her character was nothing like me. Her personality, nothing like mine. But she was the only woman of color. So in their mind, that made her the obvious choice. Everyone got a character. I got a category. What's funny is when I think back at that cast, I was nothing like any of the characters. And that wasn't an unusual thing. In fact, in much of what I watch, there are very few archetypes that look like me, that think like me, or even exist in the fullness of who I actually am. And the thing is, when you can't find yourselves in the stories that culture creates, when there's no mirror, it is really difficult to show up in real life in rooms where you're already the minority. So you shrink. Not because the room is hostile, but because the culture never created a script for someone like you. That day, my coworkers, they were being cruel. They just genuinely thought that they were being funny. But I remember sitting there with that discomfort and trying to piece together the confusion. I mean, I really grappled with this question of, if someone can misread a person that quickly, where did they learn the script? So then my journalist instinct started to kick in. After years of reporting on policies and communities and systems, I learned really quickly that you always start with a question. And then you go digging and digging for that answer. So now that I had my question, I was ready to go find the answer. And I'll tell you all, what I found, it was pretty simple, a bit troubling, but you know what? It was grounding. A lot of what we think we know about people, we don't learn it through the direct experience. We learn through stories. And more specifically, we learn it through the archetypes that those stories repeat. That day in the cubicle, I wasn't a person. I was an image. And I was the closest image that my coworkers had. In that moment, I realized that film and TV, they're more than these passive tools of entertainment. Oh, no, they're architecture for how we learn to see and imagine one another. So I went digging some more, and I realized that Many psychologists have actually documented this as what's called the illusory truth effect. The more that we encounter an idea, the more believable it starts to feel. It doesn't have to be accurate, it just needs to feel familiar. So when you see people in the same kinds of roles over and over and over again, that image starts to feel real. In fact, it's what researchers call a socially robust phenomenon. It means that it's not just in our heads. In fact, it's reinforced through institutions and generations for so long that it becomes this functional reality. The thing is, stereotypes, they don't need to be true. They just need to be repeated. Now, some of you all in the audience might be thinking, all right, it's just a stereotype. They're harmless. It's entertainment, for God's sakes. And I get it. I hear you. I do. Fiction is fiction. Characters are exaggerated. And let's be real, comedy has always played with stereotypes. But consider this. Kelly Kapoor gets to be a punchline. We watch, we laugh, and then we walk away. That laughter doesn't disappear, though. And that image sticks because we never really interrogated the punchline to begin with. I want you all to take yourselves back to a couple of years ago. Remember the movie The Hunger Games? That movie, it was about a future version of America. So in that movie, the government has divided the country into 12 districts. All of them poor, all of them controlled. Once a year, the government forces each district to send 2 young people into an arena to fight to their death. One survivor. And the whole thing is televised. See, the thing about it is the wealthy citizens of the capital, that's their ruling class. Oh, they just watch it like a sporting event. They have their favorite tributes, they place bets. And the thing about that movie is that in the capital, they don't force or control people through military force alone. They actually control people through image, through narrative, and through the management of attention. It keeps the wealthy entertained so that they never ask uncomfortable questions. It keeps the poor exhausted and afraid so that they never organize. And you know what? That should feel uncomfortably familiar. Because that story isn't fiction. It's an actual description about how power functions. See, the thing is, stories have always been used as a tool for normalization. The question, though, is what is being normalized? That day in the cubicle, I understand that my coworkers, they weren't the problem at all. They were the product. They had been shaped by a media landscape that had given them a very limited script for understanding of Black women. So guess what? That's the script that they used. It was never a problem with me and who I was and how I was showing up. It was a problem with the story. But good news. Stories have resolutions. So guess what? I wrote my own. I started writing films and TV scripts, and I pulled at the threads, asking who's centered and who's missing. I asked, what is the camera teaching us to feel? Here's the thing. When you start to ask those difficult questions when watching something, it'll change the way you watch. And when you change the way you watch, you'll change the way you see. And when you change the way you see, you start to notice when someone is being assigned a category instead of recognized as a person. Once you notice that, you just can't unnotice it. Critical thinking, asking more questions, sitting with that discomfort, refusing to stop at, did I like it? That's how we repair. Because when we become more thoughtful viewers, we become more thoughtful citizens. We become the people that can look at somebody and actually see them. So I want to leave you all with this final question. Now that you've seen it, what will you help repair? Thank you.